Chapter 1. Nadimekith Investigation. Entriua, police inspector of the Lune-Viga's Criminal Investigation Department, was in just as sour a mood as usual. Entriua consoled himself. At least this is a great chance to contemplate what rock bottom's like. After all, it was never truly rock bottom. There was always further to dig. And now he found himself treading even deeper in the sinkhole. 3 more to check, huh? My gut's telling me they aren't holed up in any damn hotel, grumbled Inspector Entriua. Then what do we do? Asked Kite, the military police lieutenant of the Peacekeepers. Entriua shrugged. We do what you said, comb every last building. Not that I'm chomping at the bit to do that. It's not a question of whether you're inclined to do it, Kite carped. Whatever you say, he said noncommittally. If you asked him, though, this was pretty far from his actual job description. Sure, the OF committed a crime, and grand theft hovercar was no light charge. It also wasn't a grave enough charge to warrant a criminal investigation squad of this size. In its caprices, fate had seen fit to station the majority of the Lune-Viga Criminal Investigation Department in Gazanyu. Not only that, but also half of the normal officers and all of the forensics officers. The Lune-Viga police force was all in on the hunt for a petty car thief. Entriua had divided his men and women into 15 different teams. 4 of those teams lay in wait at the airport, 2 were reserve corps, and the remaining 8 had been commanded to inspect every single room in all of the various inns and hotels, bidden not to trust the words of the managers or proprietors. Entriua told them not to worry about search warrants, since in the end, it'd all be on the occupying army. Yes, the occupying army, not the Liberation Army, or what have you. They'd never have him thinking of it as anything else, correct him as they might. He wanted to inspect the roads, too, but he lacked the boots on the ground. Besides, the occupiers were inspecting the roads, though they'd let them slip past once before. In any case, if they made the same blunder a second time, that would be no fault of his. On the screen at the back seat of the command vehicle, a catalog of over 40 different fee-based lodgings was displayed. Every item was listed in red, save for the last 3. The red text, naturally, meant that particular building had been inspected. Beside that catalog, another screen listed all the suspicious persons they'd encountered. Anybody who couldn't prove their name matched the name given for the guest list ended up on the screen, and so far around 20 people had met just such a fate. Citizens of Klasbühl could prove their identity and status by simply presenting their wallets, so usually these suspicious persons were using aliases and mostly for dumb reasons. Family affairs. Affairs. Things that, while misguided, didn't involve the police. There was one arrest, a man in possession of a wallet reported stolen. He had, in fact, been in possession of 20 wallets in other people's names. That was the only fruit of their investigation thus far. No one of-like had yet been spotted. Inspector. The police sergeant with him in the car had a phone transceiver to their ear. It's Gondolin's team. They've combed their target area, and now they want to know what they ought to do next. Entriua mulled it over. He'd already allotted teams to check out the 3 places left on the list. Should I have them join them as reinforcements? Nah, those rooms are small. They'd just get in the way. Tell them to come here. We'll have them join the reserve corps to wait there until we settle on the next course of action. Roger. The police sergeant relayed Entriua's orders. Are there no citizens who are likely to give shelter to an OV? Asked Kite, his impatience all but evident. Search your democracy re-education schools. That's where all the people who'd harbor OVs are. That again. Kite hung his head. We're giving this everything we've got. You've got to see that much for yourself. I do. Inspector, the sergeant cut in. What? It's Sergeant Ramishti. They're being held up by occupier inspection. Not again. Entriua was fed up. Their investigation had been obstructed by the occupying army 10 whole times now. It seemed as though, while they'd committed the police crest to memory, they still found Lune-Viga police crests to be a strange sight here in Gazanyu. You're up, said Entriua, poking the military police lieutenant's flank. Of course. Kite asked the sergeant to transfer the line over to his army's commanding officer. An exchange in a language that was foreign to Entriua ensued, and his mind wandered to the number of more important cases that were nagging at him. Finished. Huh. Entriua snapped back to reality. Sergeant Ramishti is in the clear. Yeah, until the next checkpoint. Yeah, said Kite bashfully. You sure you told them everything they needed to hear about us? He grilled him. I'm sure. I explained our predicament in detail to the area's military police regiment. Then why is it they keep getting called to a halt? Kite averted his gaze. It seems it hasn't permeated down to the lower branches of the organization. Pains me to say it, but your organization is pretty inefficient. Even us police VE got this little thing called lateral communication. You're absolutely right, said Kite, who was shrinking in his seat. Entriua almost wanted to whistle in appreciation. He'd thought Kite a total jerk earlier, but now it seemed he had some capacity to be genuine after all. Again a phone rang, but this time, it was Kite's. Kite took the display from the terminal at his waist and skimmed its screen. His complexion shifted more and more as he read on. This piqued Entriua's interest. What? Kite slumped against his seat back, dejected. The military police regiment is on the move. They're looking to arrest the OV, too, now. That sounds great to me. So, are we off the hook? Entriua asked hopefully. No. While I'll hand over the documentation of our investigation, we'll be continuing the hunt in another way. In other words, I have new orders. If we discover the OV's hiding spot, we are to report to headquarters, then wait and observe to prevent the OV from running, nothing more. What's that supposed to mean? We aren't allowed to arrest them. That's right. The arrest will be carried out by my army's military police regiment. You've got to be joking. They want us to watch after we put in all the time chasing after the OV, and they swoop in at the last second. That was it. This was an affront to the Lune Biga police force, a profession that ought to be respected. Plus, he had to balk at how the pretense their occupiers were cooperating with the police had vanished in a puff of smoke. They were, for all intents and purposes, just the drudges of their conquerors. Your superiors saying capturing the OVs beyond us, is that it? That's not it, said Kite, but he didn't look Entriua's way. At first, headquarters believed the OV to have escaped from the estate or base. That's why they weren't all that interested. They captured dozens of OVs at the estate, so they weren't too concerned by a single one evading them. But now the possibility the runaway OV was crewing the small vessel that entered from flat space is more apparent. And? So what? Entriua stared at the side of Kite's face. There might even be a good chance that that pilot was on the enemy ship that my army destroyed in flat space. In which case, the OV might be privy to important information. Important information? Kite waved a hand. I don't know what it might entail either. And even if I did, I couldn't say. Figures. Entriua was not disappointed to hear that. If it wasn't Star Force's military secrets, then it probably had to do with interstellar politics. In either case, Entriua couldn't care less. As such, the value of the OV we're after has risen significantly. And the Human Resources Department can't afford to ignore the achievements of whoever captures this OV. Ah, I get it now. You lot can't let the likes of us, local police, win the day. Yet greater anger flared in Entriua's chest. They did the work, others got the credit? No thank you. It's not you they don't want winning the day, probably. It's me, he grumbled. Why? He replied, surprised. You were chosen by the higher-ups, weren't you? I mean, a lieutenant, at your age. You think I'm young? A self-deprecating smile broke on his handsome face. How old do you think I am, Inspector? Let's see. He shot older than he would otherwise. 27 or 28, in standard years. Kite's smile only widened. In standard years, I'll be 49 this year. No way. That makes you older than I am. But then, why? Entriua clammed up. Oh, genetic modification. Correct. It isn't solely an OV technology. But according to all your broadcasts, human genetic modification is an indisputable sin. Yes, the United Humankind sees genetic modification in people as a grave crime, which would make you a misbegotten child in their eyes. Kite sighed. Were it that simple? So you're not. Have you ever heard of the Republic of Silesia? Afraid not, the inspector shrugged. I see. Kite folded his arms and looked out the window. Entriua thought he'd tell him about this Silesia, but Kite didn't say a word. Finally, Entriua lost his patience. Well, what about it? Kite mumbled his answer. Silesia is the name of a country that, around 120 years prior, incited the Silesia War and crumbled. Thankfully, today it forms part of the united humankind. Before then, the so-called Republic was in fact a military dictatorship. Around 1,000 families of hereditary soldiers held all of society in their grip. Those military families practiced genetic modification on their descendants. Their technology wasn't as advanced as the Ovs. It didn't allow for, say, changing hair color or crafting specific organs. All it did was stop aging. And you're one of them, Antrua groaned. To be precise, it was my grandfather's generation that received the anti-aging modification. Hold on, Antrua cocked his head. What does any of that have to do with them not wanting to let you win the day? That's a story from 3 generations ago. It doesn't matter how far back it happened. I'm in my family register as a Silesia aging. But why? Because it comes up when marrying. There are heavy restrictions on us when it comes to marriage. It's a shame, but it has to be this way. Any child conceived between somebody with the unaging genome and somebody without always grows cancerous in the womb. All the more reason to do genetic modification. In that case, Antrua pointed out. Do that, and your kids could live a normal life. But genetic modification is strictly forbidden, no matter what. Even for birth defects? Even for birth defects. Even just conducting genetic testing at the fertilized egg stage is illegal. When the defect is discovered, any kind of genetic modification whatsoever is impossible, let alone gene therapy. Of course, most organic diseases can be treated through mechanical engineering. I guess. But the inspector was shocked. The fact that they hated genetic tampering to this absurd extent was a sickness in itself. That's why I'm still single. The Silesia unaging population will likely die out when my generation does. That's just awful, muttered Antrua. But wait, I still don't get it. Why would they begrudge you a deed to your name over that? Please, forget I ever said that. Kite waved a hand. It was a slip of the tongue. If that's a slip of the tongue, then you let your tongue slip enough to fill a damn book. Antrua realized Kite had been changing the subject on purpose, and he frowned. It doesn't concern you. Sure it does. You lot are our overlords. So why shouldn't I want to know about all the gritty details? What happened to your right to know? We aren't your overlords. We will be building up civilian society alongside you. We are your new friends. All the more reason to tell me then. I want to know more about my new comrade. Antrua had worn him down. Okay, you've got me there. To make a long story short, they don't trust me. They say the Silesia unaging are born unable to understand the true essence of democracy. Now he understood that military police Lieutenant Kite was an unfortunate soul within the organization. He also understood why. It was racism, pure and simple. Suddenly, it all made sense. The fact that Kite had no subordinates. The fact that Kite's motion wasn't paid much attention to by the brass. He felt sorry for Izan. After all that effort buttering up Kite, he wouldn't be thrilled to learn that Kite was in fact walking a lonely path far removed from the highway to success. There was, however, still one more thing that needed clarification for Antrua. Isn't that a bit weird, though? What do you mean? How are you still so zealous, even after all of that prejudice against you? I don't see myself being so gung-ho about a job where I'm not valued. Commissioner Izan may not appreciate me, but the people do. That's how I can keep it this. So how do you manage? I'm quite happy, actually, he said. And Antrua could tell it was from the heart. Where I was born and raised, police officers appreciated by the people were a rarity. You haven't answered my question. I am a believer in democracy. Isn't that enough? Is it? I mean, you still can't get them to trust you. I merely act in accordance with my conscience. Gotcha, gotcha, he answered perfunctorily. Antrua knew he'd never see totally eye to eye with him, but he just couldn't sit on the big question, and you're okay with that? Of course, answered Kite resolutely. But there was something unnatural there, in that forcefulness. I'm sorry to interrupt, Inspector. The sergeant handed him his earpiece. It's Sergeant Kua. Got it. Antrua ran his eyes over the screen. Kua's team was in charge of the called the Ramzal. Stream it. Inspector, we've discovered 2 suspicious persons, reported Kua's voice. Don't give it all to me over the phone. Input the details into the computing crystals. They've already left, sir. Did they get away? There were quite a few things Entriua couldn't stand, and foolish subordinates was one of them. No, sir. Kua seemed flustered. They'd already left by the time we arrived. How do you know they were the perps? It was a boy and a girl, both using aliases. We searched the family registers and no such names were listed. I see. Entriua was still unimpressed. It was true that they were looking for a boy and a girl. However, by some strange cosmic coincidence, since time immemorial, when it came to travelers not wanting to be found out by their families or other parties, it tended to be a boy and a girl. The names they'd given were Saijinto and Silena. Forget their names, what were they like? What did they look like? We had a number of employees testify that they were very young. And that they seemed off, sir. Off? How so? They almost never left their room. Especially the girl, who literally never left. That's not so strange. When a man and a woman share a room, there's all sorts they get up to. Or rather, just the one thing. That's not all, sir. According to the employee that led them to their room, the girl had a hat on. A hat for men. Haha. Entriua looked at Kite. Kite was listening raptly. A girl wearing a hat, just like those hooligans had said. What about her face? Her hair and eyes were black. Her skin was a light olive color. Slender face. It seemed she was a real looker, too. A real looker, you say? They also didn't pay the sheaf. The sheaf? I see. Entriua nodded. It was odd, all right. If they wanted to evade notice, they should have paid that gratuity, even if just to zip lips. That they hadn't paid any whatsoever meant one of two things. Either they weren't versed in the customs of the planet, or they were just that incredibly cheap. Give me the footage. The footage of them. Kua hesitated to tell him. About that. We're told there's no footage left of them. It's been disposed of. Disposed of? What exactly did the manager tell you? That once a customer leaves, if there was no outstanding problem, they get rid of the footage, sir. Do they even know hotel law? They're supposed to hold on to it for a year. But Entriua stopped himself. There was no point in complaining to Kua about it. What did the receptionist tell you? If they were in the room the entire time, then the person who saw them the most must have been the person at the desk. The manager was at the desk, but his testimony completely contradicts everyone else's. He claims they were middle-aged, for one. That they seemed so ordinary as to leave no impression. That manager person is shady, Kite butted in. I fear he may be covering for them. I can't deny the possibility. Kua, give me that manager's name and citizen number. Yes, sir. The pertinent information flowed from Kua's telephonic transceiver to the command car's computing crystals. Entriua then entered the identification number and brought up the police info regarding him and the Rimzal on the screen. He fixed his eyes on the screen. Well, this is unexpected. He's a member of the Secessionist Party and provides moral support to radical extremists. The Secessionist Party? Asked Kite. What is that? It's exactly what it sounds like. A party that advocates for the exile of the appointed lord and independence from the empire. Is it a secret society? No. They have a headquarters with signage and everything. They've even got seats in the state legislature. Kite was dumbfounded. A party like that's allowed to exist? Yep. You didn't know? I thought you lot would have gotten the down low ages ago. No, I honestly didn't know. So that would mean anti-imperial parties are legal. Yeah, being against empire rule isn't a crime. It just blocks you from being a territorial citizen representative. The Lord would veto you. A ridiculous charade, Kite smiled derisively. You're just working within the Empire's framework. Personally, I see it as them treating democratic debate as an amusing plaything. Oh, there are plenty here to agree with you, trust me. That's the very reason the secessionists can't win elections. And there were even folks within the party that say independence can't be achieved by peaceful means. They exited the party and became extremists. There are a handful of groups now. Seems our manager man's sympathies lie with the Klasbiel Anti-Imperial Front. Entriua drew information on the Klasbiel Anti-Imperial Front from the public safety records. Damn, nothing much on them here. They attempted to occupy the orbital tower once, 20 years ago. Most of the perps were arrested, and now it looks like the front is dormant. What do those extremists do? Nothing noteworthy. Not compared to what you lot have done, Entriua wished dearly to add. They set fire to the plantation of the Marquis' estate, bombed the Star Force's recruiting office, that sort of thing. Course, those are crimes, so we're always on those cases. That's why we're keeping an eye on the members of extremist secessionist groups and their allies. They just don't get our undivided attention. But Kite was shaking his head. It wasn't adding up for him. You're saying the Empire knows such groups exist, but I'm not sure the Empire does know. Huh? Didn't they do humanity the service of bombing that Star Force's office? Yeah, ages ago. That was from before I entered the Force. Plus, Clasbiel told the Star Forces who the perp that did it was. I reckon they forgot more or less immediately afterward, though. As far as I know, the Empire hasn't breathed a peep to us about any of the secessionist party or extremist business. I don't believe it. You must be being deceived. That right? Guess it's not out of the question. Anything could be a big lie. I can tell you for a fact that the secessionist party exists, though. But Kite was about to speak, but Kua had grown impatient. Inspector, what do we do? Sorry, slipped my mind. Entriua scratched his head. Detain that manager. To take him to the precinct? No need. We can't take him on the grounds of a hotel law violation. Just have your team cling to him. Tell him not to go anywhere, but all polite like. Get him to cooperate. I'll be there soon. Wait, Mr. Manager hasn't rung anybody up in the meantime, has he? No, sir, he hasn't. We're observing him closely. Good. Don't let him contact anybody. If the inn suffers losses because of it, tell him the occupiers will pay for them. What, really? Kua sniggered. Hey, if that promise falls through, it'll be them he resents, not us. Roger that. End transmission. Ending transmission. Entriua patted the shoulder of the sergeant beside him in the car. The Ramsal, was it? Be a pal and take us there. And tell the cops that are on their way here to go there instead. Yes, sir. The command car took to the road. Listen, about those orders of yours. Entriua was gazing at the scenery flying past through the window. You were the one ordered to not arrest. That has nothing to do with us. Just so we're clear. Us police. We're just in this to catch a car thief. Kite felt relieved. Yes, of course. I never received any orders to stop you or your people. Let's take Mr. Manager into custody, for starters. Is it possible that the manager is harboring an OV? Beats me. If he's a secessionist, then there's no way he'd want to, right? I couldn't tell you. Don't tell me the secessionist party might be a ruse? A ruse? To what end? Entriua cocked his head. It might be an underground organization whose true purpose is helping the Empire's people flee in a situation like this. Kite was immediately stirred by his own theory. It wouldn't be strange to think they could have anticipated liberation would come and set up such an organization beforehand. It would be strange to think. I think your theory needs work, replied Entriua calmly. Aren't you the one who said anything is possible? Suppose so, Entriua shrugged. If you think it isn't a ruse, then why do you think the secessionist would be sheltering an OV? Us territorial citizens, we're leery of the OV. The leariest of us become card-carrying secessionists, and the hopelessly leariest of them run with extremists. If I recall, the extremists I investigated way back complained that the Empire, quote, wouldn't clamp down. No, that can't be. It's daffy, that much is true. But look at it this way, the Empire, it's not interested in our little world. They don't really react much, at least, not enough for the secession movement to gain much traction. In fact, I wager these new conquerors will give the extremists much more meat to chew on, Entriua mused. These jokers seemed like a much worthier adversary in the extremists' eyes than the apathetic Empire could ever be. But if the Empire isn't interested in surface societies, why do they clearly want to conquer every planet? Because they don't want us out in space, of course. Isn't that obvious? I have my doubts that that's the only reason. What other reasons could there be? Entriua responded lightly. I just don't think it's possible they have no other motives, but now's not the time to be getting into this. Kite took off the cell phone terminal from his waist. It was fitted with accessories that went on Empire-made memory crystals. The memory crystal with the investigation data, if you please, he asked of the sergeant. Yes. Reluctantly, the sergeant handed Kite the memory crystal. Oh, Let's add in how the secessionist party might be a ruse, he smiled, as though he'd hit upon a good idea. That possibility is near zero, though, Entriua pointed out. All the better, then. Why's that? Entriua couldn't pick up what Kite was sending out. The military police regiment might have many personnel, but they're not well-versed in this land's circumstances. They're probably looking for a target to hit that stands out. So if we give them that intel, they'll busy themselves with searching secessionist party premises for a while. And in that time, we catch the OV. Seeing Kite's proud expression, Entriua's mood plunged ever downward. I think I may have just accidentally increased the student population of those democracy re-education camps.